Hello and welcome to Might Be Awesome. My name is Sam Basher.
My name is DJ Wooldridge.
And if you're watching this, you probably watched Avengers Endgame.
You need to have, because we're going to spoil it.
Oh yeah, this is the 22nd film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the end of the Infinity Saga. We've released our spoiler-free discussion, which you can check out right over here. And you can check out our spoiler-filled discussion right over here, too.
With our pal Hector Navarro. It's really cool, yeah.
Yeah. He's a good talk. But today, DJ and I want to get into the nitty-gritty of Endgame and how exactly our heroes defeated Thanos and fixed the universe. So this will be spoiler-filled, like we said, so turn away now if you haven't seen it.
There's spoilers.
There will be.
They're coming.
You gone? Good. Okay, so today we are focusing on the linchpin of this whole movie working, time travel. So people speculated that it would be a big part of this movie a while back. I think we were part of that team a little bit. I want to put it out there. But the way that time travel functioned in this film is unique to most movies and fiction overall. So today we're going to be breaking down how time travel works in this movie, what happened to Steve Rogers exactly at the end of the movie, and what it means for past and future Marvel films. So starting off, first up, time travel, how did it work? The basic rule set up is when someone moves back in time within the bounds of this movie, that the past is no longer their past. You're not doing a highlight reel right now. That has become your present. And since it is no longer your past and it is your current present, how you're experiencing it, it should have no effect on your future. So any actions that you take in the past cannot change the future, like how our actions now don't drastically alter the future. Things play out in a more natural flow of time.
I do understand that. However, when you say it, it's like now it's your present. It feels weirdly specific to you and your experiences of. But anyway, I think so. You go back. That is now your present. So you can't alter anything that brought you here because then you wouldn't be back in time. Sure.
Yes.
Moving forward with that.
And also, good thing to point out as well, because the past existed without your future self there, by putting yourself there, it is no longer your past. It is something else entirely that is experienced just by your future self. It is confusing because guess what? We're talking about time travel. It's made up. It's going to make you scratch your head. That's how it's always going to work. But since you are now adding an element X, that is no longer your time. Since you're affecting it as is. And since that person is now experiencing it as their own present, it no longer can behave the way it used to because you're there. That is the rough lesson that we were taught during this movie. So we're not dealing with the direct past that you experienced. It's a different version that now exists because of your future self being there. And Christopher Marcus, one of the writers of Endgame and Infinity War and Civil War and Thor 2.
and Thor 2 and Winter Soldier and I think the first Cat movie. Anyway, the writers did an interview with the New York Times and Christopher Marcus basically said what Hulk says in that scene, which is if you go to the past, then the present becomes your past and the past becomes your future. So there's absolutely no reason it would change. I highly recommend checking out that interview because there's a lot of interesting details about, like, originally Tony Stark was supposed to go to Asgard and have a stealth suit that made him invisible, but Heimdall could still see him, so they fought.
It sounds really cool.
There's a lot of interesting, like, aborted ideas and plans that they had that I'm glad that, I think because it's Endgame and it's like, it's done, there's no chance we're going to use this in a later movie. Here's all the details.
They threw out one idea where it was like someone goes to the Triskelion to go get the Mind Stone, but then drives to New York to go get the time
movie. Let's throw a road movie in there too, just for fun.
We have 3 hours. Let's go ahead and kind of stretch it out just a little bit. But and also they mentioned in this discussion, in this interview with New York Times, they sat down with multiple physicists to try to explain what would be a way to make this work in a sense that doesn't ruin our past continuity. And that's a big part of it that we'll get to in a second. But also during this movie, things got a little hairy, especially when the Ancient One is explained to Bruce that when you remove the time stone from her timeline, you might open up that world to dangers because it's a new branched reality. And this can be avoided if you return the stones to the moment they left, hopefully mitigating those adverse effects. Now, in this conversation, it gets kind of confusing as to what the timeline she is referring to. But what we've gathered is that she's not referencing Bruce's timeline, the main MCU timeline. She's talking about hers moving forward now that she has now talked to Bruce.
Especially after the second viewing, because I was a little confused about the time situation. She's admitting that you're creating a branch. And the problem with that is now that branch no longer has the time stone. And in the MCU, these wizards are all about the time stone. It's their one big get.
MacGuffin.
So she wants that back. But what's interesting about that is that it doesn't line up with how time travel works in Doctor Strange's own movie.
We're going to get into it. We want to talk about time travel as a whole. But to seal this little time loop, Bruce promises to return the time stone to the exact moment that she basically hands it to him, and that's what we believe Cap does. We'll get to Cap in just a second, but that's what closes that loop. She now lives in a branch reality, that version of the ancient one, and our MCU still stays the same. And also, her mentioning that the stones being gone now is a huge threat to reality. That is interesting because now we don't have them full stop period in our main MCU timeline.
No, because Thanos destroyed them.
Which is also a good thing to do writing-wise, because now you get rid of wishing stones.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also worth mentioning in that timeline, the stone may come back, but now Hydra believes Cap is one of them, and that version of Cap has no idea about that.
We'll get to that.
Tony Stark had a little heart attack.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. But yeah, we wanted to talk about some other time travel movies that specifically get thrown under the bus as well.
Yes.
Like with Back to the Future, which they mention a lot, that it's kind of a lot of horse crap.
Yeah, well, especially Back to the Future gets a nod because they kind of Back to the Future their own movies. You know what I mean? Because all of them, I was going to say Avengers, but all of them were previous movies that they're stopping in on. Another one that gets mentioned is Terminator. Terminator's another one that I know you like to poke holes in that one. It's
an easy one to poke holes in because the entire premise of the movie kind of gets bulldozed because this is supposed to be one long continuity, which it doesn't work that way, or it doesn't feel like logically it doesn't make any sense. But also, I'm a dumb human. What do I know?
I would like to say, if you want a very tight time travel movie, one that's probably the most, I would argue, realistic to how it could work or be discovered, I suggest Primer. I even love in this poster we pulled, the tagline is, "What happens if it actually works?" And the answer within the movie is everything goes to crap. It's the most scientifically grounded version of time travel. It is a single timeline. But it just, even if you, the most grounded as possible, it just goes off the rails almost immediately.
And the way that Endgame,
within the movie,
and the way that Endgame tries to move around that is by saying that you moving back in time creates a sidestep branch of time where you can kind of just do whatever you want and hang out. But what is established in this movie by Hulk is that that's the only real version, the only real way to do time travel.
Yes.
But we find that also negates a lot of stuff that's already happened in the MCU. Specifically, if we're just focusing on movies, Doctor Strange's use of the Time Stone does not behave that way.
Yeah, because in the Time Stone, the Apple scene specifically, he's rewinding and moving forward in time. One of my favorite sequences of the whole movie is when he rebuilds it. It's like a big blockbuster action sequence in reverse because he's rebuilding the city.
It's extremely impressive.
It's so cool, and maybe you get around it because it's the Time Stone, so it's above the normal rules of what they can produce with science. Maybe. Another big one, and this matters less because the shows matter less to these movies, is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.'s whole last season, season 5, dealt with time travel. And it was like Terminator Back to the Future rules, where they go have a big experience in the future, and then they go back and then obliterate that future, essentially, which only becomes super weird because I think one of the characters from the future came back with them, and that character was just up to series regular.
Yes, he is, and he's in the trailer for the upcoming season. But you guys highly recommend that show. It's a ball and a half.
Yeah, it's gotten a little rough season 1, but gotten really good.
Oh yeah, and we want to talk about what happened to Cap. But first, I want to give a quick shout out to Reddit user E_Byron_Nelson because they did an extremely detailed map of the timeline for Endgame. Which at first there's a lot of acronyms in there, so take your time going through it. But I feel like this is the best explanation as to how the time travel functioned, and especially when it comes to what Cap was up to when it came to the end of that movie.
And I think the interviews with the writers and directors kind of confirm it. I love that it accounts for the mitten that Hawkeye got in his little trial run. Oh no, there's a reality without the mitten. What are they gonna do?
It's gonna implode. But speaking of taking things from time, let's focus on the other movies that we visited and see how they play out. Because you mentioned when it comes to Avengers, there's we know that in one reality after the events of the first Avengers movie, Cap is aware that Bucky is still alive. Maybe the Mind Stone may have wiped that a little bit.
Yeah,
there's a little wiggle room.
Crossbones, Frank Grillo's character. And Sitwell all think Cap knows about Hydra, but that reality's Cap is unaware of that.
So that's pretty complicated.
And also, Loki's on the loose.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And so possibly because at that point there's a lot of redacting or retconning we've heard where it's like Loki was influenced by the Mind Stone, whatever. But in this timeline, there's a chance that maybe he ran back to Thanos and is working with Thanos in that timeline because he was looking for the Space Stone.
Yeah.
He was looking to conquer Earth and get the Space Stone at the same time.
Yeah.
So possibly he went back to them and there could be another invasion with the Space Stone.
Whoops.
Yeah, or Asgard could be attacked, or possibly he goes and tries to take
That's right.
over.
He was trying to get the Tesseract the whole time.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. And he had a Mind Stone and he lost both of them. Thanos lost both of those in that movie. Bad news bears.
That was bad gambling on Thanos' part because he gave Loki the Mind Stone to get the Space Stone. Logic's a little shaky on that one.
Oh, yeah. So possibly Loki is just running amok on different worlds or
Cool.
realms.
Cool.
This,
Good for us.
This could be the timeline that the Loki show takes place as well. That could be.
Yeah.
That it opens a door to that, but also what we've heard from the Loki Disney Plus show is that it's a look back on his life.
Well, Thor said he'd been around for 1,500 years.
Yes.
So Loki's been around just as long. So there's
Hopefully.
plenty of room for a show.
Oh, yeah. I'm very excited about that. But also, we do know that the scepter was returned,
Yeah.
or the Mind Stone specifically.
Yes.
So we still get Vision, we still get Scarlet Witch, and we still get Quicksilver, and possibly Ultron in that world
Yeah.
as well. But still, things aren't looking too good when on all fronts Loki. But then it comes to Thor 2.
Yeah. Speaking of Thor and his supporting cast.
The main thing we gotta ask here is the hammer can be returned. Like,
Yeah.
if you return it exactly the moment you left,
Yeah.
all Cap has to do is just let the hammer go, and the other Thor will come and
Yeah,
will call
pick
it
it up.
back. The question is, the ether's a liquid,
Yes.
and he returned it with a solid. Maybe if you just
But we don't know what activates it, so maybe if you
Leave it in
tickle
the
his
sun.
belly, you leave it in the sun, tickle his belly, it becomes a liquid again.
I said maybe if you put it under Natalie Portman's tongue when she's sleeping, it'll dissolve like a
Yeah.
Tums or whatever. I don't know if Tums, Alka-Seltzer. There you go. It's a reality stone. It can do whatever it wants.
I want to see the version of, let's scrap the version of Thor: The Dark World that we have, and let's do this version where randomly throughout the movie a raccoon suddenly stabs her with a thing and runs off, and then it comes back like Captain America shows up like, here, remember that poison that's in your body? Here it is again.
Say
and then bails.
Which is,
Yeah.
the semantics at that point, but it is worth asking those questions. When it comes to 2014, this is a reality where Thanos, where we eventually first really meet him and his whole crew of cronies.
In the first Guardians movie.
In that one, that is the Thanos that we have in the finale of Endgame.
Yes.
That specific one.
Yes.
And at the end of Endgame, we see that he is dusted.
Yeah,
now,
he
there
gets
is a
dusted.
theory that you could say that maybe Tony sent them back to 2014.
Except the visual is the same of what Thanos did to everybody else.
Yeah, so you're led to believe that he's dead. So in 2014, that could be a reality where Thanos just does not exist anymore.
When it is interesting because that means all the events of Infinity War happen. If you wanted to retcon, and again, spoilers, if you wanted to retcon Tony's death, that's a reality where Infinity War never happened. So theoretically, Tony's still around doing his thing. So that leaves the door open for like a later Avengers movie where Tony pops up like, hey, great, you got rid of Thanos in my reality, but now Kang or Annihilus or some other threat that maybe Thanos kicked in the teeth is now running amok.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Also worth mentioning that in Infinity War, they did a pass where the Living Tribunal showed up. And
Yeah.
they were like, audiences were perplexed.
I'm sure I would have liked it though.
Yes, but lastly, we did go to the 1970s
Yes.
at one point, and we borrowed Pym Particles. So didn't see that in the pack when Cap was going back in time. I don't think that's super necessary, but
Yeah.
hey, if you want to close the loop and not cause any bad branches,
Yeah.
got to go back and fix that. But is everything fixed after the stones were taken? For the most part, in the timeline that our friendly Reddit user Byron put together for us,
Yeah.
he shows a natural progression of where Steve could have gone to return them,
Yeah.
which seems overall pretty straightforward. Chronologically, it's still he can kind of do whatever he wants.
I
but
didn't see any notepads with anybody traveling in time. I hope
No.
somebody was keeping track of like,
hey,
at this
maybe
point.
there's a timestamp on the watches.
I also like in that Guardians movie that I want to see the version of the Guardians movie too, where Star-Lord gets cold cocked.
Yeah.
And then there's no Thanos. Like
And-
literally Ronan shows up. Remember that whole scene, that really boring scene with Ronan and Thanos in that movie? Ronan just shows up and like, oh, all right, well, I guess never mind. I don't know.
Maybe Ronan succeeds at taking down Xandar.
Yeah, but Thanos didn't. I don't think so.
Maybe.
But it does. Anyway, it changes a lot in that universe. That universe is probably the most affected.
Oh yeah, you try your best, but you sometimes don't succeed.
Yeah.
That's the lyrics to Fix You. But anyways, I did want to mention that in this travel back in time,
Yes.
this little memory road that Steve goes down, returning the stones, he does have to go to Vormir. And that means he has to run into his first and arguably biggest adversary, and that's Red Skull.
Yes.
As a flying space ghost. And all he the only reference he had was that Hawkeye said the red guy.
Yeah.
And all accounts, this is an alien world. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And so Steve at some point had to talk to Red Skull, and also we don't know
Also,
what the.
how do you return the soul? Do you throw it back in that pond? Like,
I mean,
what do you just?
you get a drone,
Yeah.
or you get some sort of slingshot, and you
Yeah. Did they send him back with a spaceship? Questions.
Red Skull opens his mouth
Right.
and dissolves in his mouth. Maybe that happens, but it could open a door story-wise for possibly seeing the return of Black Widow, because we don't know the effect of returning a stone to where it came from, but specifically the Soul Stone, because that one is shrouded in so much mystery.
Yeah.
There's a chance that maybe she is returned when you return the stone. Possibly not. Possibly not, but I think the door is cracked. A little bit for that story.
I don't think so, because they specifically, when Hulk did his snap, he said that he tried to bring her back. And if that doesn't work, I think once you make the deal to get the stone, and once that deal is, the impression the movie gave me is once that deal is made, it's done and done.
I have the same feeling, and also with it, the movie that Scarlett Johansson is starring and producing in now, the Black Widow film, it's sounding like it's a prequel, and that's totally fine, because it'd be fun to see her in her prime as a spy. That would be cool. Also to explain what Budapest is, because we never really learned what
we
it
never
is.
got that. Wouldn't mind if Hawkeye or Winter Soldier made cameos in that movie,
because she had an interaction with Winter Soldier, which that was established in the movie Winter Soldier, which is pretty cool. Also worth asking this question.
Also, their love interest in the comics.
And also worth asking, in Infinity War, we see Thanos snap, and he sees Baby Gamora in the Soul world. Talking to her and asking if it was worth it. There's a chance that maybe there's a deleted scene out there where Hulk and Iron Man may have gone to Soul World for a second to understand the sacrifice that they're making, especially to restore balance, and maybe got to see Black Widow one more time.
If that's the case, I'm bummed it wasn't in the movie, because that would have been a good coda for that character, because that's my one sticking point with that movie is I don't quite like how they resolved her
No
story.
Spoilers. We have a spoiler-free review up there.
Yeah.
And spoiler-free up there. Spoiler-free one, if you can decipher when he says that point, good for you. It was a fun conversation. But let's move our way over to Steve growing old with Peggy, because basically what is established when you watch the movie the first time, you're like, okay, so they make branching realities.
Yeah, they're not really going back in our time. They're going back in our time, but creating a branch.
There you go. But then all of a sudden you see old Steve, and you're like,
yeah, because he doesn't time travel. There's no visual of him time traveling back. He doesn't. He's not a part of the mechanism or any of that stuff. He's just sitting on a bench, implying that he knew the time. It's classic Doctor Who stuff. You know what I mean? Where he's just waited him out. You know what I mean?
And either he didn't need to know, because that thing may have already been programmed. He just waited to hit the button.
Yeah.
You know, like that could have happened as well. But what we're led to believe is in a branch reality, he lived out a life with Peggy, came back to the moment basically when he left.
Yeah.
And that world worked out the way that it did, and that could be a fun story that we explore. And in our world, Peggy grew old with the husband that she had.
Yeah.
Maybe the guy established an Agent Carter. Who knows? But the directors of in Endgame and Infinity War, the Joe and Anthony Russo, stated in a quote to Entertainment Weekly, I believe, they said if Cap were to go back into the past and live there, he would create a branch reality. The question then becomes, how is he back in this reality to give the shield away? Interesting question, right? Maybe there's a story there.
I have a theory. I have a theory when we're thinking about this. So what they're implying here is that Cap left, and he did do Pym Particle time travel shenanigans to get back to our world, just not through. Why wouldn't he use the thing that was already set up? Because all he had to do was hit the button. But whatever. What if that's another Cap from another reality that they had to do the same shenanigans to stop Thanos? And so our Cap grew old in another reality, and this is another Cap from another.
Oh, throw that in there. Hey, that's a theory.
Yeah.
That's
because there's got to be a reality out there where they had to do the exact same thing to stop Thanos, and so he was the mysterious husband through our reality, but he's technically a Cap from another timeline.
There's that theory.
Yeah. And that's why he just had to wait around.
Guess we're going to have to watch the 7 Disney Plus shows to figure it out. The animated
There's
What
so
If.
many. There's so many.
Hey, we got that not the animated short, we got the short with Coulson on the way to Thor's Hammer.
Yeah.
And this is on the way back to Return on the Infinity Stones. There's a better title out there. But speaking of titles, let's look at the titles of the upcoming movies in the MCU for Phase 4, whatever they want to call it.
Yeah, they've been cagey about it, but we know that we're going to get Black Panther 2, Doctor Strange 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, this Black Widow movie that we were discussing earlier, a Shang-Chi movie, and the Eternals movie.
And probably 17 more Spider-Man movies, but nothing confirmed as of right now.
Oh, and I would almost seriously, we're probably going to get a Captain Marvel sequel.
Yes.
If we're getting a Doctor Strange sequel,
$1 billion.
Yeah, how are we not going to get a Captain Marvel sequel? Yeah.
And Black Panther, I know Ryan Coogler signed on, so that's going to be exciting. But as of right now, who are the Avengers? Who do we have that have stuck around? I mean, the Guardians can be called in now because we got Thor on the team, and also we're all more tightly knit now, which is really, it's a cool place for our characters to be. Yeah. But right now on Earth, we have Hulk, we have Ant-Man, we got Wasp. Captain Marvel could be called in at any point, which would be interesting as well. Yeah. And we have Black Panther, who could be a part of the team
ones I feel
and Doctor Strange.
The ones I feel confident about are Black Panther and Captain Marvel.
I'd say I'd throw Spider-Man in there as well.
Because again, the Marvel deal with Sony ends with Far From Home.
I mean, in this movie, we had Spider-Man riding a Pegasus in a giant war zone. I think they're pretty. I'd be thrilled.
I'd be thrilled too. But again, theoretically, Sony could be like, "Cool, our deal's done and done. You don't get to use Spider-Man anymore."
Yeah. People would freak out.
Yeah.
People would. It's like when Netflix suddenly buys a show again. They're like, "Oh, it's just kidding. The Office is here for another year."
And also after we know there's got to be a Fantastic Four and an X-Men something down the pipeline, and
like 17 years.
I would be surprised if one particular X-Men character with claws doesn't show up in the next Avengers movie.
Sabretooth.
Yeah. He's the one. He's the one.
Everybody's Nightcrawler because he's got little pincies, little pincers. Anyways, I did want to mention that after the snap in this MCU, a lot of people, the first snap disappeared exactly where they were in three-dimensional space, and that I referenced that specifically because we saw planes crashing. Yes. And we actually did an explainer video, which you can find up there, where we talked about the effects of on Earth following the snap when it comes to infrastructure, transportation, general global health. It's not good.
Yeah,
not
so
when
great.
People are coming back, there's a chance that Hulk may not have thought about on a universal scale of where everyone should be when they come back. He could have thought bring everyone back safely to now. Yeah. And that could mean people who were on boats are now on land. Or it could be that they landed on another boat. Yeah. Or it could be that people who are on planes and helicopters are now on the ground. And that could be
That would be great.
That would be
Let's
great.
assume that. Can we assume that?
You know what? We'll assume that.
It's a superhero universe, because if you were in a plane and you got vanished and then you got brought back midair without a plane, let's assume that's not what happened, because this is a superhero universe and we get to have it the way we want.
And maybe if you went the extra mile or extra couple inches, Hulk, maybe you brought back the people who immediately died.
Like the people in the helicopter crash.
People in buses that crashed. Anyways, just want to bring that up.
Throwing that out there.
Also worth mentioning what's happening in Wakanda, because in the beginning of Endgame, we see that Okoye is being a spokesperson for Wakanda, kind of running that little corner of this Earth. With the Avengers. So with the return of T'Challa 5 years later, I feel like he's going to be challenged for his rule. We could see that Okoye could step down because her whole mission is for what's best for Wakanda. And if she sees that T'Challa is what's best for Wakanda, she could step down and give him that role. But I could also see that M'Baku stepped up because he was gone. And also, it's not even malicious at this point. It's that we needed stability. We needed stability, and Okoye could side with M'Baku in a possible script because she wants what's best for the country, not what's best for T'Challa.
Do you want to see a Black Panther movie that has to unpack all that, or can chart its own course and is not worried about post-snap shenanigans?
I think it has to give a nod.
At least a nod. Yeah, I agree. At least a nod. But what would you prefer to see?
I would want them to nod in the first act, but also I think, and I'm going to mention more of this in a second, that I think a lot of villains could be born out of this trauma. Yeah. That in the past 5 years they've been stewing, they've been formulating, and maybe a lot of villains had people that they lost in the snap and they didn't come back because of accidents like car accidents or something like that. Oh, like, or even on a universal scale, there's people on other planets that are affected by this.
Yeah, maybe you got vanished, but your loved ones passed away because of the trauma, and so now you're back, but...
Yeah, like the Avengers could have done more. They did it literally the most they could, but you could see the villain motivation behind that. But when it comes back to Wakanda, you could see them being basically an outreach group, especially with their embassies all over the planet. Yeah. And them having a more... they're having more of a role in the global community because of it now.
I'm hoping whatever story Ryan Coogler wanted to tell doesn't get derailed by this situation. Although you did just bring up this might be a really good motivation for Doctor Doom.
Yeah,
because he also runs a nation.
Very good.
And we might be a little bit pissy about this situation.
Also worth mentioning Doctor Strange, because I wanted to, because there is a sequel, and I know Scott Derrickson really wants to do a movie with Nightmare,
and
that could be fun. But also on a
give me Shuma Gorath, gosh darn it.
That's a big tentacle hentai monster.
Yeah.
Honestly, that sounds cool too. But the idea of now that without the Time Stone and without the Infinity Stones, our reality is at risk.
Yeah.
And so seeing how him as the Sorcerer Supreme, or soon to be Sorcerer Supreme, and the rest of the sorcerers trying to figure out how to handle that, and then being invaded by like Nightmare or other supernatural beings, sounds really interesting.
Very interested in Doctor Strange tackling this stuff more than Black Panther.
No, because it's just they're slightly bigger stakes, which can be cool. Also, I'm excited for an Ant-Man sequel, whatever form that takes, because dealing with an older Cassie, so maybe her taking up a more superhero-like role because she's older,
like
and also
stature in the comics.
And her for 5 years had to grow up in a way without her dad, and now you actually have an interesting family dynamic, because since those movies have always been about family, now it's turning it on its head. It's been it's really interesting. And also when it comes to villains, Doctor Doom is the one I'm most excited about seeing pop out of here. Also, just got to mention it because other people have talked about it. In Endgame, they mention an earthquake under the water and Namor, and there you go. Mention it. Moving on.
No, the thing we need to mention, the real Easter egg, is the scene in Endgame. Here's your little nugget. When everybody's showing up, when Wasp shows up, if you look briefly, there's actually an army of aliens, and one of them is Howard the Duck, and that makes this movie perfect.
Yeah,
that Howard the Duck is in there. It makes this movie perfect.
An A++ at this point. Hey, man, I'd love to see Howard the Duck show up in Spider-Man Far From Home, and there's your segue.
Because the one that's supposed to come out next and specifically deal with this fallout, and I think this is I'm most interested to see how it handles this, because of the movie characters we've gotten. Spider-Man is the most grounded. For the Netflix shows, we had Daredevil and Luke Cage and the rest of them. And if they ever want to do something with those characters in the future, they're going to have to, I feel like, navigate this somehow. And I think Spider-Man's going to be patient zero. And so I'm very interested to see how Far From Home unpacks that and see if the snap stuff kind of derails the movie or enriches it.
I think the best thing they could do is kind of give it some time compared to when Endgame, like give it a year. I think then we can like let the character kind of grow and breathe and reestablish himself in the world that now exists. So as we know so far is that Ned and Peter, based on what the directors have said, they both snapped away. We saw Peter leave, and now he's back. Ned is the same situation, and as far as we can tell from the trailer, MJ and Flash Thompson are around the same age still. I think Betty as well, but for the most part, that's who we can confirm.
It looks like all of Spider-Man's class and supporting cast got snapped away to make things a little bit more convenient.
Hey, schools are impacted, man. There's a lot of people. There's still a lot of people that aged up, but now we're seeing that possibly some of his classmates that he did know are now older. They could be in college or even be starting families, depending on what grade he is in. I don't think I've ever really established what grade he was in when it came to Infinity War. I do want to talk about Mysterio, because now we are seeing that Tony Stark is no longer. He's dead. He's no longer around. And that was kind of his mentor. And so maybe Peter's searching for someone like that. And also, since Thor is now off-world with the Guardians, and Cap is an old man, and he's reading AARP and drinking Ensure, old people jokes. There could be, he could be trying to look for not a mentor, but someone that he could team up with. It feels like someone who could take the place of him. And Jake Gyllenhaal's handsome, so I get why you fell for him. I understand.
He's got a rich beard in this movie.
Oh, such a rich beard.
And it makes sense that somebody would try and fill the role of the missing heroes, missed opportunity with the Thunderbolts. And it would also make sense that Nick Fury is naturally suspicious of such a person, because he's suspicious of everybody.
And I get why he wouldn't be
and
so
suspicious. And also, he's gone for 5 years.
Yeah.
He's got to catch up.
Yeah, he's got to catch up. And I get why he wouldn't be suspicious of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because it's like, Tony trusted you. You fought with the Avengers. You did all these good things. Maybe he's hesitant,
Yeah.
But like overall, I can see Nick and Peter's relationship kind of flourishing, and I'm excited to see the twists and turns we have from Mysterio and Peter, and what that means, because I know there's talk of like Michael Keaton popping back up again in this movie.
Which also, was he dusted, or is he now 5 years older? Is
Liz older now?
Yeah.
Because the actress is 29. So like I feel like you...
Wait, the actress is 29?
I believe you. Don't quote me on that.
No,
what I read.
Hold on. Don't quote me on that.
I read that in an article, but I did not go and check that on IMDb and on Wikipedia. You're welcome. Last thing I want to bring up is when it comes to people who we saw die in this movie that could come back.
Yeah.
In this film, we saw that Gamora from 2014, the first instance we actually ever met Gamora in the timeline, it did show up in this movie and fought with our heroes against Thanos. So when Tony snapped his fingers, my theory is that Tony just thought Thanos and his forces go away.
Yeah.
Now, that could include Gamora. It could.
Yeah.
We don't know. But since she was not fighting for Thanos, there's a chance that she may have been exempt from that.
Yeah, I think there's no way they're doing a Guardians movie without Gamora. I think this was a good way to bring her back. I also think it makes the dynamic more interesting because she doesn't know the relationship with Peter. And I also think kind of edgier Gamora is a more interesting Gamora.
And also, she could maybe fall for Adam Warlock a little bit.
Yeah, because they've heavily hinted that he will be in Guardians 3 or Thor.
Or Thor.
Yeah, if Thor's still around for the third Guardians movie. I will say this becomes one of those interesting things where it's like, man, you had to watch a lot of the movies before now Guardians 3. You had to watch both Infinity War movies to even keep up with what's happening.
Also, if you have Adam Warlock, you should have a Thor there so that you could have someone that's anywhere near power level. Anyways, just mentioning that.
If they didn't bring back Red Skull for the Soul Gem, it would have been cool if it was Adam Warlock. If that's how they introduced him.
Would have been cool.
No.
But still, movie's great. That's but so far as what we know is that the Gamora's somewhere running around doing Gamora things, stabbing people, classic. Also, Nebula's in a really good headspace, so I'm feeling good for my girl. Really happy for her.
I really like Nebula a lot.
Lastly, though, I did want to mention Black Widow because I mentioned this earlier in the video, but there is a chance that with the stone being returned, there could be... the deal sounded like if you take the stone, you keep the stone, and I keep the soul. So the idea of returning it back to where it was, there's a chance that the deal could be reversed.
Yeah.
So we could see Black Widow coming back in some aspect in the MCU because it's happened in comics 20,000 times with so many characters.
Yeah, and also with the option of alternate realities. Again, there is a whole reality now where Thanos was not around, therefore he could not have done Infinity War. So theoretically, Tony and the version of Tony in that reality are fine. So, I mean, if they ever want to bring him back, that's the door open for that, and that's some classic comic book garbage right there. So,
yeah, it's the best. We eat it up, and we love it. But also, if her movie ends up just being a flashback, I'm super on board with that as well.
Yeah.
They did that with Captain Marvel. They did it with the first Avenger, Captain America movie. Yeah. So overall, I won't be too mad. But gang, think we just took every time travel aspect and the future of the MCU and condensed it down to the best we could on this video. So let us know what your theories are when it comes to time travel. Any gripes you might have, I get it. I understand. It's time travel. Also, when the movie invites criticism, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So let us know what your thoughts are down below. Also, check out our spoiler-free review and our spoiler-filled review up here or on the screen, but also patreon.com/onlystupidanswers because you can get these videos early.
Yeah, you would have gotten this early if you were on Patreon. So check that out.
Don't miss out. And, of course, make sure you check out all of our Game of Thrones reviews and our spoiler-free reviews of movies that are coming out. We have Detective Pikachu coming very soon, and our deep dives. Our next one has to do with Pokemon, and y'all are gonna love it. But follow us at DJ Talks Trash, at Sam Basher, and at Might Be Social. And until next time, stay hydrated. I need to stop doing that. I don't have a tagline.